Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley.
And I'm her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi and I want to welcome you to Open to Hope Conversations, the podcast.
We believe that the greatest gift you can give yourself after a loss is hope, using this moment to connect with others who have not only survived but thrived.
So let's get started. Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
This show is brought to you by the Open to Hope Foundation with a message of helping people find hope after loss. Well, Heidi, we have got a guest today from an amazing family, a family that has impacted the world over 3 generations. And we're going to talk about Stephen Covey, a legacy of hope, the Covey family, and the things that they have gone on to do after some tragedies in their life. So Heidi, you want to introduce our guest today?
Sure, Mom. Our guest today is Stephen Covey's grandson, Michael Sean Covey. Michael Sean is the executive director and co-founder of Bridle Up Hope, with a mission of inspiring hope, confidence, and resilience in young women through equestrian training. And Michael is no stranger to grief and loss. He lost his grandfather, Stephen R. Covey, and 2 months later, his 21-year-old sister, Rachel, died. So he is here today to offer hope and to talk to us about what you can do to not only survive, but to thrive after loss. Welcome to the show, Michael Sean.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I think this is a wonderful podcast.
It's great having you on today. 8 years ago, your grandfather, Stephen Covey, who wrote an incredible book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he was killed in a bicycle accident. And then 2 months later, your sister Rachel, who'd suffered from depression and had some self-esteem issues that your family's talked about, died by suicide. Wow, what a lot for you.
That's right. You know, it was a really tragic summer for us as a family, and back-to-back losses with my grandpa, and my sister Rachel in September 2012, and very devastating for us as a family, and we've learned a lot since then.
Mm-hmm. Well, Heidi and I were wondering, because we have found the book, and it's so inspirational over the years as psychologists, the idea of the 7 habits. Were you able to use those?
I grew up with the 7 habits. Habit 1, be proactive. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. Habit 3, put first things first. Habit 4, think win-win. Habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Habit 6, synergize. Habit 7, sharpen the saw. So these are, timeless principles that apply to people and organizations everywhere. And, after losing my grandfather and my sister Rachel, I think that, these principles were really, they made a huge difference for us in our healing and in our progression as a family. For example, just choosing to, practice habit 2, begin with the end in mind, to think about, the purpose for our lives and, where we want to go with our lives going forward, right? We have, a long life ahead of us, and we need to, continue to set goals and to envision and to believe that our greatest contribution in life is always ahead of us.
I think that's really important, Michael Sean, especially after a sibling loss, because you can get so caught up in the fact that your life is so changed that it's almost like you have a hard time having a vision. Like, who am I without Scott, and who are you without Rachel, and how do we move forward without them in our lives? But we do have a big life ahead of us.
When we face, tragedy and grief, it's so easy to let the tragedy become something that really defines us, right? But I think what's important is we have to let the tragedy strengthen us and open us to the door of hope, right? And it's something that can propel us forward to do good and to use that energy in a positive way, and to be outward instead of inward. And those are some struggles that we had initially, and we tried to be proactive and decide that we could respond to this tragedy the way that we wanted to. Another habit, that was really applicable for us as a family at that time was habit 5, seek first, understand, then to be understood. Right. So I'm the oldest of 8 kids. Rachel, my sister who died, she was just 19 months younger than me. And, all my siblings and I, we all responded differently to Rachel's loss. My parents and I, we got together and we just said, how can we help the whole family to recover and to heal and to try to bounce back from this tragedy? And we were all struggling, but we were all responding in different ways. And we really had to try to listen to each other and listen to the feelings that we had and try to open the door of communication so we could try to make a difference and try to help each other.
It sounds like you all leaned on each other and supported each other as siblings.
Yeah, we had to,
and then what was the next step?
I think the next step was my father really exercising leadership and saying, we've had this terrible tragedy happen to us. Why don't we look outward and try to make a difference in the lives of other people? Rachel battled with depression for years. And we said, there are so many young women, so many youth today who battle with mental illness or with depression. Why don't we try to help others who suffer with these same things? And my parents said, why don't we start a foundation in Rachel's memory and in Rachel's memory of her love for horses. Because when Rachel was alive, she loved horseback riding, and it really made a difference in her life. There's something therapeutic about riding horses, and it helped many of her friends. We said, why don't we continue this tradition of helping young women with mental and emotional struggles, and we'll help them through horses. So we started this foundation called Bridle Up Hope, where we run a really unique horseback riding life skills program for young women with depression, anxiety, low self-worth, or other related challenges. And what's interesting is in this program, we teach these 7 habits in the Bridle Up Hope experience.
Oh.
So that the girls, they learn the foundations of horsemanship. They learn how to connect with the horse emotionally and build this resilient bond. We teach them the 7 habit life skills so that they can, learn to set goals for their lives. They learn to take ownership. They learn how to communicate. They learn how to self-care. Habit 1, be proactive. So it's all about taking responsibility for your life, right? And we teach these girls how to do that and how to take responsibility over their horse. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. It's all about goal setting, right? What's the vision for your life? What's the vision for the next 3 months and so forth? Habit 3, put first things first, right? You have to work before you play, right? You have to do some preparatory steps before you can really move forward. Habit 4, think win-win. You have to think of your own needs and also the needs of other people. Habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And it's all about listening. You have 2 ears, you have 1 mouth, so listen accordingly, right? Habit 6, synergize. You have to learn to work well with other people and to use creativity. Habit 7 is sharpen the saw. It's all about self-renewal for body, heart, mind, and soul. Our Alpine Utah program serves young women from all over the state of Utah. It's a year-round program, 14-week curriculum. And we have plans to expand our curriculum to existing barns around the world. And we have another program we're starting in Pocatello, Idaho. We're starting a few more in Utah. We're starting one in Minnesota and in Estonia, of all places, in the next 2 years. And one day we believe that there will be hundreds of barns that are using the 7 habits with horses to help young women.
I love this. I love this idea because there's something about horses, and they've done research, as you know. They are just very intuitive animals, and they can merge with you and help you to take your pain and depression away.
Absolutely. There's a lot of research and just more and more coming out. As science and technology gets better, it's really powerful. The bond between a horse and an individual.
Do you have advice for people who've lost a sibling to suicide and about the family thing? And, what has it meant for you?
My advice is to really reflect on how the loss can propel you forward, right? There's great energy that's created when there's a tragedy. And if you look at many of the great causes of the world, they all started at a tragedy, which is so unfortunate, but it's also a blessing for the world in some ways. And I believe that everyone who's experienced great loss can channel that into something very positive, whether it's through joining an existing nonprofit in your community, or starting a nonprofit, or raising money for a specific cause, or volunteering for this local group, and so forth. So many ways to get involved, but great energy is there, and it can be harnessed for something good, and it can facilitate your own healing, but also the healing of many other people.
Your family and you have been so open to talk about this, and suicide can be a great shame and guilt. And the fact that you've, reached out and talked about it and been open and having these things come forward is a pretty amazing thing.
Well, and I think it's really important right now, because the reality is that suicide is on the rise with teens and young adults, and we need to get it out there and to let people know that it's okay to talk about it, and we need to talk about it. And talking about it is not going to cause other people to want to take their lives. It's going to alleviate people. We need to get it out there. And I appreciate that Michael Sean is doing this, because there's a lot of people out there that, are struggling and having a hard time right now.
Yeah, absolutely. We believe that, we have to be open, and there's a massive stigma, right, associated with mental illness and mental struggles. And like you said, we have to talk about it. It's so prevalent. It's an epidemic in our society. Suicide rates have tripled in the last decade in the United States for young adults. So we have to talk about it. We have to learn more about these illnesses and what's causing them and what's happening and how to respond. And I believe that it takes the whole community to figure this out, right? It's not just a few little nonprofits or a few healthcare providers. It's everybody, right? It's businesses, it's churches, it's nonprofits, it's other community groups, it's psychologists, healthcare providers, and so forth that need to come together and try to curb these problems that we see.
Well, and I love that you're using nature and animals to help people, because I think we need more of that in our lives.
There's something powerful about, inviting a young woman to come to the barn, right? Come to the barn, learn how to ride a horse, learn how to muck a stall, and there's something powerful, like you said, about reconnecting with nature and with the natural world, right? And instead of, just living in our heads and keeping silent about our struggles, it's so powerful and healing to be active and to reconnect with other people, to put the smartphone away, put the screens away, right? But to bond with nature, with animals, with real people, real conversation. It's very transformative.
Oh. Well, thank you, Michael Sean. To give us your website.
Yes, our website is bridleuphope.org.
Thank you, Michael Sean. And I know that your grandfather and your sister Rachel are your guiding lights, and they are definitely looking down on you. And I love the way that you're keeping their legacy alive, and you are not only helping people, but you're saving lives. So thank you for everything that you're doing.
Well, thank you. We're very honored to be able to do this.
And thanks everybody for listening to this show and watching this podcast today. And Heidi and I, and I'm sure Michael Sean, want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe.
I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.